Welcome to one of the talks of the Joseph Movement. I am talking today to Clive Human from Standing Together to Oppose Pornography. He is an expert in the field of pornography and its effects on individuals and society. He has gained his experience during the past 25 years. And during this talk, we will touch on matters such as popular arguments around the porn debate, why Clive calls porn the biggest sex educator, and also whether porn has any link to sex trafficking. Thank you so much, Clive, for being with us and for chatting to us regarding these interesting subjects.
It's only a pleasure and always nice to be able to share with others.
Thank you, Clive. I really appreciate it. Now, I'm very interested and very curious. How did it happen that you got involved with Standing Together to Oppose Pornography? Please tell us a bit more about that.
Well, basically, Tershia, that's my story. You know, I've been there, done that, got the T-shirt. So I'm not talking from a position of pointing fingers. I've experienced pornography. I know the effect it had on me. And when I was a preschooler, I was molested by a pedophile. And, then at later stages, I was sent to boarding school. At the age of 11, I was exposed to pornography. And in those days, believe me, that was long ago. I mean, it was so long ago, even the rainbow was in black and white, but that's another story. It was, there was no internet, there were no cell phones, nothing like, there weren't even videos and CDs. So it was purely magazines and things like that. And at around 11 years of age, I was exposed to pornography and masturbation at boarding school. And it sexualized me to an extent, that's a developing brain. And that's why I have such a passion for parents to know the damage pornography can cause. But, I was exposed at that young age, and that progressed, and it changed me, and it changed my perceptions. I started objectifying females. I started objectifying girls, and I was youngster, but it created in me a way that I wanted to be promiscuous with so many people. But in a way, it also set me up in later life to realize the damages that were being caused and that was happening to me. So all through school, I had girlfriends, but I was looking for the wrong things in them. I wasn't seeing them for who they are, their intelligence, their sense of humor, their friendship, etc. I was just looking for one thing. And that's what pornography did to me. It sexualized me to such an extent that I objectified women. Also, later in life, I went overseas a lot. I traveled for sport and for business. And I used to smuggle in a magazine and later videos, sweating through customs, at the airports, etc., bringing in to be one of the mana, one of the main guys, at the rugby club or wherever it was, swapping with this guy, swapping with that guy. And I never realized the damage that it caused me and was causing me. And, I always gravitated towards a certain type of female because that's what I was looking for. So it's very interesting that when I met my wife, and that was through a blind date, she was totally different. And I couldn't understand, why is this person so different? What's the thing? So that interested me. But anyway, that developed and eventually it got serious and we've got married. And I've been married to her for 44 years now. So it's a long, long time, But in the beginning, I tried to introduce her to pornography. I just thought this is cool, we can watch it together. And
Yes.
do our thing together, the normal things.
Mhm.
But I never realized, she from the beginning was very anti-pornography. She said, no, forget about it. I hate that stuff. I won't, so I would do it on my own. When she's gone to bed, I'd have a video or, whatever it was, and I'd watch that. And then she would say, no, if you do that, you're going to go sleep in the spare room. Don't think you're going to come, all that type of thing. The typical things
Yes.
would go on in homes today.
Yes,
And
of course.
then it was. I realized later, S.T.O.P was formed in the early 90s when porn was first deregulated in this country. And when I say
Right.
S.T.O.P, I'm saying Standing Together to Oppose Pornography, the acronym of that. That's where S.T.O.P originates from. So we would then, my wife and a few like-minded friends got together and they approached local cafes and shops and outlets to stop stocking pornography because there was no regulation. They could put
Yes.
anything down on the counter for guys to buy, but kids would be allowed into the shop and they could see the covers and they weren't wrapped in plastic or anything. So it was a huge problem. Anyway, S.T.O.P went and lobbied and got them to shut it down.
I'm sorry, I just want to stop you there quickly. Now that you're referring back to children, and you were also earlier mentioning the developing mind. Can you just explain to us what exactly does that mean when it comes to children? Until what age is the mind actually still developing? If you can just touch on that for us, please.
Basically, what I want to say propeller heads, but the guys, the professors and all that, they say the frontal part of your brain, that is your brakes or your conscience, and that is only fully developed when you're in your mid-20s. So you can only really make a fully informed decision in your mid-20s where you can weigh up all the pros and cons, whether it's beneficial or negative, only when you're mid-20s. And that is what I'm saying. So you're a developing mind. And let me tell you, research shows that kids who are exposed to sexually explicit material at a young age, it hotwires their brains because their brakes, their conscience hasn't been fully developed. So it hotwires the brains to the pleasure center. And that is an issue because once your brain is fully developed, it can right itself. The brain is pliable. And so you can, reboot it, so to speak. But often you'll find, and I've done, I've been counseling thousands of guys over 25 years and couples, etc. And I've seen that something can trigger a guy. He can be a great father, husband, etc. in the home, and he can be away somewhere and something triggers him and he acts out totally out of character. And that is what the brain guys say is where that underlying trigger has just, the neural pathway has just lighted up again, and it's taken him down the wrong track for the wrong reason. And he can be desperately sorry, and it can mess up marriages, relationships, because it's almost like a learned behavior. And that's what's happening to our children today when I say their brains aren't fully functional. You take a little kid, he can run out in the road without realizing there are cars that can knock him over. But the older he gets, as his brain develops, he realizes, hold on, these can hurt him. And so it goes on until you know how to deal with it. And that's exactly the development of the brain like that. But, that is, as I say, what happened to me. So I can say, I was sexualized too young. I acted out without the thought process behind it. But that's where S.T.O.P started. And I realized the damage it was doing. And with the help of my wife and with counseling and with the faith that I had, I managed to get through it. And that's when we realized that we need to help so many others out there.
That is wonderful. Such an amazing testimony. And I'm grateful that you had your wife by your side, because I can only and do realize, and I'm very well aware of the fact that is extremely difficult for spouses. who have a partner with that kind of struggle. So you've now touched on how S.T.O.P started. Can you please tell us what is the mission and the vision of standing together to oppose pornography? What do you mainly focus on?
Well, S.T.O.P is a non-profit group of volunteers, which, as I said, was formed in response to the proliferation and harm of pornography. And our mission statement is, and I'll read it, to promote a society in which children are nurtured in an environment of sound family values and in which women and children in particular are protected from sexual crime, sexual exploitation, abuse, and violence in accordance with their constitutional rights. And that's our mission statement, and that has been that, for the last 25 years.
That is wonderful. That's incredible. We truly do believe, Clive, that we need more people like yourself and more organizations just to have a louder and bigger voice when it comes to this pandemic of pornography. Now, the next issue that I would like to touch on is some common or popular arguments when it comes to pornography. One of the arguments that I have found is extremely popular is, porn performers, they're doing it willingly. It's their free choice. But the actual truth of the matter is that whether they are there willingly or not willingly, which we will touch on a bit later, is the fact that when it comes to pornography, those individuals are subjected to violence, and they're subjected to controlling behaviors and false promises and even manipulation. So that's just one of the things that stands out to me when it comes to the porn topic. But in your extensive years of experience, what is the most common argument that you have come across around the subject of pornography?
Firstly, I want to say I've been on 2 television interview programs, hour-long programs, where I've had porn performers on the show as well. And they are different people when they're on the show bragging than when you speak to them off air and say, cool, so you really enjoy this, and I said, so you've got a child, would you allow your daughter to get into the same industry? And I haven't had one who said, absolutely, it's such a lie. And most of the time, which a lot of people don't realize, is that these people are coerced into doing what they're doing. And it may be a need for finances. They may be in a tough situation. And many of them that I spoke to on these 2 programs said, well, they single parent, their husband left them, there's no support, they need money, and they've got a certain lifestyle they have to support, etc., etc., etc. So they will be exploited, and they've been told, well, try this, do this, or they've had a boyfriend who has then said, well, if you want to make some money, I've got this mate, and if you go out with him and do the business, that type of thing. Now, you want to tell me that's natural? No, it's not. And some of the things that people don't realize, though, and just I'm talking general population, I talk at schools, I debate at universities, I speak at whether it's churches, faith groups, I've spoken at mosques and synagogues and churches. I've been everywhere, to raise awareness. And a lot of people to this day still are surprised when they hear, what do you do now? I run a support group for pornography addicts. And they look at you puzzled, what? You can get addicted to pornography? They don't realize that it's a dopamine addiction of the brain, the same as alcohol, drugs, eating or gambling or whatever. And the researchers and scientists say it's a more difficult addiction to break than alcohol or drugs, because there are more chemicals involved in the brain to an addiction to pornography than there is to alcohol or drugs, etc. I'm just saying, I'm quoting research, but that's one of the things that people don't realize. And, so many of them think that, well, it's harmless. I'm watching on my own. No one's getting hurt. It's better than me going out and acting out somewhere else and blah, 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 So they're thinking, well, it's okay. It's all cool. Never mind what's going on behind the camera and who that person is and what that person has done or is being done to. That is what is so sad. People don't realize it, or they don't want to. They see it as a form of entertainment. And one doesn't tend to think further than your own personal satisfaction. But it is a drug. It is really, really abusive. And especially there is a huge, and we'll get onto that a bit later, the effects it's having on children, because at a click of a button, kids get involved and they can see it. And a lot of them unintentionally, they're not out seeking it, doing homework and projects, they unintentionally come across it. But
yes,
a lot of them think it's harmless. As I said, I'm just doing it on my own. But they don't realize. Remember, we as parents give our kids electronic devices, and it's so easy to put an adult content block on it, or to put one of these programs on it which will block harmful stuff. But parents don't do that, and that's very dangerous. They don't have rules and regulations in their own home, where kids, if they're too long, they don't see the signs. If a kid, you walk into the room and he slams his computer shut or something like that, or turns his phone off quickly, those are warning signs that parents should know of. And often people don't think like that. They think, well, my kid's all right. And it may be fine in your own home, but what happens at school and at friends' place, that's dangerous. And it changes you, and I can attest to this. It changes the way you think, the way you behave, the way you look. You're not looking at that, and I know you're not looking at that female for who she is. You're looking at the bits and pieces which arouse your sexual palate. Let's call it that, because that's what you're trained to do through pornography. And as I've said, what's happening on the other side of the camera, that's irrelevant. And the effects, I want to say, on a developing brain. And I've seen thousands of men and couples, etc., with this issue in their relationship. And I would like to say close to 90% of those men, one of the main causal factors of the problems they're having later in life with relationships, with their friends, with their wives, whatever, is early exposure or young exposure to sexually explicit material. They can remember the time they found that magazine hidden under their dad's socks, or a video, stuck in the garage somewhere, or a DVD, etc., etc., etc. And that has had a lifelong impact on their development. So those are some of the issues, that surround us, that people don't realize, and those are the questions we get asked a lot. And if I may just say, what parents don't understand, if their kids have pornography on their cell phone, they could be charged with neglectful abuse. And if that kid has made, kids with sexting today, etc., they take photographs, they send it to one another. That's manufacturing. If you're under 18, it's manufacturing child pornography. It's a criminal offense. It's a sexual offense. And if you distribute it, send it to your mates or whatever, they play these games, guess whose this is, and guess, those type of things. And that is distribution of child pornography, a sexual offense. And if you do that often and you get caught and you can't stop yourself, you could end up in the sexual offenders register. That's how serious it is. And if you've got a charge like that against you, you try getting a job, you try getting a visa to travel overseas. They want a police clearance, they want, all that stuff. It hampers you, and kids don't realize, and parents don't realize the jeopardy their kids are in.
Yeah. And Clive, tell me, can you provide us with some tools that we can promote to parents and families that we can just add to towards the end of this this recording. You don't have to give it right away.
Yeah, sure.
If you can do that for us. I also just want to backtrack. You mentioned earlier about triggers. I would love to do another talk with you going more in depth regarding the triggers and what we can do as individuals and as friends and family to help protect one another and guard one another as well. But just to move on quickly, we're talking about what we are bombarded with, what children are bombarded with, being desensitized. And, throughout the years, there are so many popular books and movies and television shows and music videos that unfortunately glamorizes and even romanticizes images and behavior that is just, that plays around in our minds. And it's really playing or has a very negative effect on us without us actually realizing. But now you've touched on as well some of the most popular arguments that you get when it comes to pornography. Thank you for that. It's very interesting. One thing that you mentioned to me not too long ago was that pornography is the largest sex educator. Please, can you elaborate on that?
Well, as I say, if you look at the statistics, now why am I focusing on children? It's because, that's our future. But if I read you some of the internet, the youth internet pornography stats, the largest group of internet porn viewers is youth between the ages of 12 and 17. Now that's distressing that. And
very, very scary.
And for some of the people out there who don't know pornography, it's not like those very, those romantic, just a little bit explicit things. This is hectic stuff. And, I've spoken to guys who manufacture pornography and marketed pornography. One guy, in fact, eventually became a pastor because he started having kids and he got out the business. And he says, that never before has a society, ever in history, has society been so bombarded with sexually explicit material than what we are being bombarded with today. And unfortunately, some of the larger groups are our kids who are being exposed to it. The average age of first internet exposure to hardcore pornography is 11 years of age, but later statistics reckon it's closer to 8 years of age that kids are being exposed to hardcore pornography. And often it's unintentional while doing homework or projects or something like that. So 80% of 15 to 17-year-olds are having multiple hardcore porn exposures online on cell phones. That's 80%. And 90% of 8 to 16-year-olds have viewed online porn. That's frightening numbers. And people may say, and I say most of the research is done in Europe and America because we don't have the funds in South Africa, but we have done certain bits of research for the Film and Publication Board, etc. And our stats do not differ too far from international standards. And I mean, if you look, if you go onto a search engine, Google or whatever, and you type in the word porn, in less than a second, you will have over 2 billion results in less than a second. So, I mean, they talk about over 15% of the internet is porn related. And that's frightening. And, there's, I won't even go in how the pornographers lure them in. I mean, there were names of kids like My Little Pony just spelt incorrectly, and that's a porn site. Even the White House in America, which is where the president lives, that used to be a porn site until, with pressure from this, all the governmental CIAs and all those guys, he sold it to, because kids would go and they get a project on the White House, they'll go into the White House and there's a porn site. So they are drawing children in that way, which will make them customers for years to come. That's how sad it is.
Yes.
And I mean, the internet stats say that every second, 30,000 people are viewing pornography on the internet, and they are spending on an average every second around 48,000 Rand worldwide is being spent on pornography. So, wow. And kids say, yeah, but you know, and if you think about it, I know, listen, if you look at trafficking is about $150 billion industry worldwide. It's a massive industry. Pornography as well, because the pornography industry makes more money than Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, eBay, Yahoo, and Netflix together. Oh, that's how big the industry is. So, you know, that's what we're up against with this. You know, it's around $100 billion industry a year. It's a massive industry. So when there's an industry like that, organized crime get involved because there's big bucks, like in trafficking, like in drugs, like in arms and ammunition and all these things. Organized crime get involved. And when they create a demand through pornography, that's when people get trafficked, people get, and I think, and you'll probably know this better than me, but they say in certain, you know, in the Polaris report, I think it is, says that of the people that they rescued, over 50% of them said that they were forced in and filmed having sex. So pornography was made of them being, I want to say, brutalized, raped, etc. So that's where, you know, people are trafficked into that, and you guys know very much so, you know, from where they come from. You know, they promised jobs, they promised money, all the nonsense, and then they're forced into prostitution. And pornography is used to groom them. And so many of those people will be able to tell you that they were forced to watch pornography so they could see what they had to do to the guys they were sent to or were brought in, you know, who paid to have sex with them. So pornography plays a huge role in that as well. So it really is an industry. And by you, well, I'm not meaning you, but I mean by the person out there clicking on that, you creating a demand. And when there's a demand, things happen behind the scenes. And often when I speak at schools, Tershia, I say to the kids, you know, it's big money and that. And they say, yeah, but they only watch the free stuff. So they don't put money in the pornographer's pockets. I said, every click on a site, there are hit counters, and the advertisers pay extra to advertise on that site. And that's so indirectly there's never a free breakfast, as we say in the classics. There's always a paying behind it. So they put all these free clips and things out there to draw you in and to create customers for the future. So it is a wicked, sad, exploitive industry. It really, really is.
Most definitely. And I think what is just so sad is that we really need to emphasize the fact that users of pornography do not realize, as you correctly say, the actual truth behind the facade or the smile while they observe these performers. And you've not touched on how pornography is linked with human trafficking, or more specifically sex trafficking. We need to realize that the facts are actually that people are actually being either forced, or they're being tricked, or, like you say, coerced or manipulated into performing sex acts. And even those that are there willingly are exposed, as mentioned earlier, to violence and to manipulation and to forced control, etc. So that is something that I really, really need to emphasize to those watching.
Do you know also what people don't realize, if I may just add, the effects on society and on the youth that pornography does. And I mean, there are wider ripples, you know, it's that illustration of dropping a stone in the pond and the ripples go out. But it teaches kids who look at porn to objectify women. And I'm dealing with school kids, and I'm talking grade 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way to grade 12, who are addicted to masturbation. And that's sad, because it will hamper their future development in a normal, healthy, psychosexual way. It's going to hamper what they do and how they, etc. And they don't realize it, you know. They think they can just switch the switch off. One day when they get a girlfriend, they can just move on and forget about porn, and you know, they've got a real live, object, because, you know, if they've been looking at porn so long, that's all they will see. So they'll be choosing eventually the wrong life partners, because they're looking for the wrong things. They're looking purely from a sexual perspective and not from a holistic perspective. But it objectifies women, and it teaches them, to have the totally wrong expectations in a relationship, normal expectations as well as sexual expectations, because it's not normal. Pornography sex is not normal. It's not normal. And that's why I re-emphasize that. So, and another thing with pornography, it never shows consequences. It doesn't talk about sexually transmitted diseases, HIV and AIDS, unwanted pregnancies, and even rape. And I know of 2 cases in the last 6 months of 16, 17-year-old girls that have been raped by someone at school. And when they go into this person's history, they realize this guy has been on all different types of websites, etc., you know, all hectically into porn. So they are believing that that's all where, and I'm talking about top quality schools, you know, private school, and you know, some of the brand names of schools in the Cape. And those are the type of things that are happening, and it's very, very serious. And, you know, naturally it promotes unfaithfulness, sleeping around, you know, as many partners as you can get. And, you know, it can lead, and which I've seen, kids to a loss of self-esteem, because and boys, school kids, and I'm talking also girls to a certain extent, they look at these porn actors and actresses, and the guys are there not because they got bright minds or anything. They're there because, you know, maybe their nickname's Tripod or something. It's you know, like, you know what I mean? But that's what it is. You know, they're there for their physical attributes. And the school kids are looking at this, and they're thinking, wow, you know, that's not me, you know, so they feel insecure, and they are, you know, they become depressed and anxious and things. There's lots of emotional negativity around looking at pornography, and eventually they can become depressed. They lose interest in schoolwork, in sport, no matter how well they were doing. It just drags them down. And also naturally, you know, by looking at this, they become sexually active at too young an age, and they think, and sadly, you know, a lot of the women, or not women, girls that I've spoken to, they've been forced almost with friends and that, you know, in groups, to see porn and that. And so they start believing their only worth to society is their sexuality. And so they start putting it out there because they think that's how they're going to be popular, or that's how they're going to be accepted. And that is so wrong. It's just setting them off on the wrong foot in life. And one of the things that SAPs have told us, that child-on-child sexual abuse has exploded by close to 400%, maybe even more. That's reported. And that is because why? Kids are mimicking what they're seeing in pornography. If you think in the old days, if it was Star Wars and you were a kid, you know, you wanted a saber and you wanted to go and play with your friends with your lightsaber, or if you were even older, Cowboys and Crooks, you wanted to go play Cowboys and Crooks. So now kids are growing up and seeing pornography. So they are acting out on their friends what they see in pornography. So child-on-child sexual abuse has skyrocketed in society today. And it's really a serious issue that we all need to be aware of, speak about. And, you know, when we talk, we have to talk in groups. You know, I always say pornography is like the silent sin, the secret sin, because no one talks about it. You know, you can talk, if you're around a dinner table with friends, you'll talk, yes, I heard that oak's taking drugs or this or that, or he drinks too much and he's, oh, you know, but no one will talk about sexual issues and pornography. And that's why, and there's no outward symptoms. You know, if a guy's, if he's high or if he's had a few drinks too many, you can see it. No doubt. But with pornography, you don't know if it's the guy sitting next to you on the train, bus, or at work, wherever it is. You don't know how that guy is. So those are some of the things that we need to take care of and be aware of, because we have to look after our children, and they are the most vulnerable in society today. And I mean, I'm sure you would be able to add the statistics of how many children are trafficked today.
That note, Clive, sorry, do you know during what period was that increase? Do you know, or over what period? A 400% increase in child-on-child sexual abuse, you say? Do you know?
No, I can't remember. I got that from the Film and Publication Board. That was one of the things we used to, but it was over you know, and I mean, that was a good few years ago, I will say that. But, you know, there's a report, I think, on the Film and Publication Board's site where they did a survey in South Africa with a lot of kids, you know, all over, from different schools in metropolitan to rural, etc., about accessing pornography and that. And in that, there was also a report from SAPS where they said that they've just seen a skyrocket. You know, they're dealing more and more with, but that was over a period of a few years, that they could say that, you know, it's increased by close to 400%.
Now, that is extremely scary, because we are so aware of the fact that during COVID, internet use has also skyrocketed. I mean, obviously, we find ourselves so much more frequently on the internet and on social media. And of course, it includes our children. So it actually is a bit of a scary thought to think that this figure that you've given has most probably increased. So yeah, that is a scary thought.
Yeah, you know, it's more than likely it has, because, you know, there was one very, very well-known, one of the biggest internet porn providers. When our first lockdown came, as a marketing exercise for them, they said, well, for the next 3 months, access to our sites will be free.
Yes,
in certain countries.
Yes.
But in the meantime, they have been prosecuted, and there's a whole fight against them. The owning company is Mind Geeks, and immediately they took about 10.5 million clips off their sites, which were abusive, which were rape, which were, you know, revenge porn and stuff like that, which is highly illegal. But they thought they could buck the system, and I know they were taken to task, and I think they're still fighting going on in that area. So, which is good. That is a good omen that society in certain ways is fighting back.
Yes, very, very true. I agree with you, and I'm very happy about that. And it's just also just to make people realize that one of the reasons why this material has been removed is because it has been proven to be either a trafficked situation or child pornography, or there is definite abuse involved and so forth. So that is the label of pornography. It's actually, I don't even want to call it entertainment, but as you also said, many people see it as entertainment, but it's entertainment to the detriment of someone else's life.
Very much so.
Yes, and that is what we really need to realize. I often think of the fact that there are two victims, the one in front of the screen and the one behind the screen. One in front of the screen or the one behind the camera are both victims of pornography. I'm very, very curious now about this next question that I want to ask you. And I'm sure you can perhaps go into so much detail, but can you maybe just briefly give us a summary of, is it the 4 stages of pornography addiction? Do I have it right?
Yes, correct. That's generally accepted. There are 4 stages. Sorry to talk over you, but I get quite passionate about this because I've been involved so long and I just see the hurts. The first is just the repeated return to the material, where the person may find this material and they go and they look at it and they act out, and it becomes just, like a cycle where it's planned. Oh, I'm going to be alone today, or I've got time, or this one. And then they plan it and they go into the cycle of looking at pornography, acting out, feeling guilty, and then moving along and then doing it again. So it's a round and round circle, the build up, etc. And then after a period of time, and that's the nature of the human brain, we get used to something, we want something a bit more, something a bit better. And that's when it starts escalating. We're looking at maybe this type, or whether it's bikini girls or whatever, after a period of time, and that can vary from individual to individual. For some people, it can take months and years. To other people, it can take days. And they start looking for more explicit stuff, and they require, by then you're addicted and you require more explicit, rougher to get the same high. And that's because the dopamine levels in your brain are functioning at a certain level. And by looking at this stuff, you're pushing that level up in your brain. So that becomes the new norm. So instead of looking for it and wanting to look at it, you start needing it. So you have to look at more rougher stuff to keep that level of dopamine that high, at that high. And so you start escalating. And this is at the stage where maybe you start pushing your partner, your life partner, your wife, whatever it is, into doing things that they're not happy or not comfortable doing in the intimacy of your relationship. And that creates a lot of issues and problems as well, because you're expecting something, you're wanting something because you've been looking at it, and your partner doesn't want to, or doesn't live up to the expectation of a woman in a video who never ages, who's been makeup and with various methods and means, they make them look $100 million, and they are, they're not, so it's all smoke and mirrors. It creates a lot of problems when your partner refuses to participate in what you want to do, what you've been groomed to do. And then you go from the addiction, the start stage of repeated return, to escalating, and then it goes to desensitization. And that's the stage where was previously maybe seen as gross or ugly, now becomes acceptable suddenly. And stuff that was maybe even repulsive, that suddenly starts turning you on. And that's because you've become desensitized. And as I say, the period of time can vary. And you start believing that this type of behavior is normal. And that antisocial sexual activity and behavior is just normal life, when it's not. But you've been led to believe that it is. And you go into activities that are against your morals and even illegal. And that's where guys get involved in child pornography and things like that, because they've been pushed. They've gone down this spiral and just gone worse and worse and worse. And you start looking for the most devious stuff to turn you on, to get your dopamine levels to where they want to be. And the last stage is the fourth stage, is the acting out stage, where looking no longer does it for you. And not everyone who's addicted to pornography will act out, but a lot do. And that, you know, that's when just looking no longer satisfies you. And that's when you start visiting prostitutes, escorts, strip clubs, and all that type of thing, you know, to fuel there's the desire that, and to feed that lion in you, which is, you know, being developed over a period of time. So from normal, just looking at pornography, it starts escalating to rougher stuff. You then become desensitized and go into maybe illegal, immoral stuff, and then you start acting out. And that is the general stages of addiction. And that can, and often that cycle shortens and shortens and shortens, where you need that fix, you know, and so you're starting to look more regularly. And I know guys who used to tell me, they've told me that they used to drive around in their cars at work, you know, for work, etc., and they would have their cell phone on the dashboard, you know, somewhere with a porn movie playing, and they'd be watching it while they're driving around during the day. That's how addicted they were, you know. And if they're seeing girls on the side of the road running and that stuff, you know, they almost do a Cape Veer. They go around the block to have another look, or you know, that type of thing. They totally just transfixed and just so over-sexualized. It's just not healthy for anyone.
Yes, that actually makes me think of online grooming, because we know that traffickers absolutely love using the internet and social media to lure their victims, because, I mean, it's just so easy through a few clicks of a button, you know. And it actually just makes me realize with online grooming and the fact that we are so bombarded by pornography and all these explicit images, and especially if you are someone who's actually willfully viewing pornography, I'm just thinking of the dangers of online grooming, because with that comes along sharing of images that turn into more sexy images, that turn into very explicit images. And because of your brain that's so desensitized through pornography, you are not realizing that you are placing yourself in such a dangerous position of becoming a victim of online grooming, which we know within the human trafficking sphere can escalate to actually being trafficked. So that's just something that you made me think of now.
That's 100%. If I can say, if you look at, there's a huge spike, unfortunately, in grown-ups wanting to abuse children. And there's this whole thing online where they pretend to be, you know, they catfish them, and that they pretend to be this person, but they're not. And how many kids have been kidnapped, raped, murdered, trafficked? It's epidemic. We don't hear half of what is going on, not even close to what's going on. And that is because that person that is perpetrating this has started off watching pornography, and then it escalates, desensitizes, and they want to act out. And because it takes them down this path of illegal, immoral, and as bad as possible, excuse me, they will, you know, then kids become attractive. And, you know, there's even a whole movement of people who feel that kids should be allowed to be sexualized at a young age, and they call themselves the MAPS, minor attracted persons, which is so sick, you know. So, and those people have been groomed, and they are grooming kids online, and that's how so many, you know, and a predator has got a 6th and a 7th sense, And I've spoken to I've been in prisons, and I've spoken to guys in prisons. I was in maximum security with sex offenders, and even the famous, I sat down opposite the guy, the famous or infamous Rhodes Memorial rapist. I sat opposite him, and he said he was a really decent guy. He worked at a restaurant in Rondebosch, and it was too far for him to go home between shifts of lunch and dinner. There was free internet there, and he found pornography on his cell phone, and he ended up raping, I don't know, I can't remember now if it was 11 or 13 women. So he's, he got like 11 or 9, 11, 13, somewhere around their life sentences, and 130 years or something like that. Purely, he says, and he told me, looked at me and he said, "Sir, it's because I found the stuff on my cell phone." And that's where it took. So he was, and when he tried to ask girls out, he was so sexualized at that stage that he couldn't, he wouldn't look them in the eyes. He was looking down, and he was looking at their bits and pieces, so to speak. So no one, they would look at him and say, no, because they'd pick it up. And so he ended up raping girls. And that was purely because he found pornography on his cell phone and started looking at it between shifts at work. And, there were many like that, guys, taxi drivers, who would tell the girls, well, I'll take you there, etc., but you have to perform a sexual favor, and, things like that. It's all about that. And that is, and they're sitting in prison today because that girl may have been 13, 14, 15 years of age. And so it's rife. It really, really is. And in fact, let me tell you, at one stage, when the so-called sex shops in Cape Town were first legalized, etc., the people who sold the most pornographic DVDs were the taxi drivers. They would sell them for $10 and $20 to the kids on the taxis and make extra money. They would burn copies of these CDs, and it was a thriving trade for them, an illegal thriving trade. So there's always these, so our kids are being bombarded with sexually explicit stuff. And it's just so sad. It really is. And people need to be aware.
Exactly. And Clive, that also just reminds me, and I just want to touch on, when it comes to minors, and when it comes to what the law of our country says, if you're an individual who is aware of a minor, in other words, a person under the age of 18, who is being abused, and that it includes obviously sexual abuse, you are lawfully required to report it. And if you are found not to report it, but although you knew about the situation, it's a criminal offense. So that is something that we should always keep in mind and always be aware of. So whether you know for certain something's going on, or whether you're only suspecting it, if there's that suspicion, then you do have the obligation to actually report it.
Otherwise, you're accessory to the fact.
Exactly. That's exactly.
And I know I had a case where a guy came to see me. Well, he was sent to see me because he was filming his 14-year-old stepdaughter with his cell camera. He would put it in the bathroom, hide it away in a bedroom and that, and he was filming her. And so the first thing I asked, I phoned, he pitched up when I was still at an office and that, and he pitched up there to see me. And I asked, I said, has this been reported to the police? Because it has to be, I can't see you. And so I phoned the person who referred me, and I said, well, the family, I think, and I said, no, I'm not seeing this guy, because if I know what's going on, then, and I don't report it, I'm an accessory to the fact. So we have to. So, so I made the counselor that was seeing this family saying that you have to go to the police. You have to, else you're accessory to the fact. It's very important that, and sometimes in family situations, someone could be being abused in the family, and I know places where I've had phone calls where people say, well, my husband or my father sits watching pornography and the kids are walking around in the lounge or whatever, then they can see it. You know, I'm saying that those people need to know that that's abuse, that's child abuse, and that is an offense, and it has to be reported.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for emphasizing that, Clive. Could you please provide us with various ways in which people can actually make contact with you if they want to book you for a talk, or if they need counselling or any information? How can people make contact with you?
Well, we do have a website, stop.org.za, and there's you can send an email from that website which comes to me, and you can ask contact details, etc. I used to have a landline number, but Telkom has now taken away the copper cabling, so that's probably the first line, you know, through that. And we do have a Facebook page as well, where I can be contacted, and that's Standing Together to Oppose Pornography Facebook page. So there are various means like that which people can contact me. And if it's urgent, etc., they must just put there, and I will call them back as soon as I get the message. So there are other organizations as well, but there are also unbelievable amount of psychologists who are dealing with these issues now, and especially if it's a child involved. There are, you know, like Hope House and places like that. Even FAMSA have certain areas where they can deal with kids. There's imemovement.co.za. There's a lot of these, and as I say, I can give you a list of people who can who are willing to help and to step in and to offer counselling in all parts of the Western Cape and even in the country. I know, you know, it's so nice. When I started out in this field, and as I say, for me, it's a ministry to me. But I mean, when I started out, I knew no one else doing it. There was one other guy in East London who also was doing a similar thing, but that was it. But now to see these, you know, much younger people with more energy and drive, etc., dealing with it, you know, like Guardians of Purity and Case, you know, Centre Against Sexual Exploitation, South Africa, Case SA, people and groups like that doing phenomenal work in these fields, whether it's trafficking and addictions, etc. So there's a lot going on out there that we should be all more aware of.
That's wonderful. Yes, thank you so much, Clive. I also just want to say that we really take our hats off to you for sticking it out for so many years, 25 years. You're a director at Standing to Oppose Pornography, or Standing Together to Oppose Pornography. And I just want to thank you that you are willing to stand in the gap and to help and assist, because this is definitely not a very easy topic to tackle. It's a very controversial topic. When it comes to human trafficking, again, it's actually a much easier topic, because generally it's just completely unacceptable to just about every person who hears about it. But it's not the same when it comes to the pornography topic. So I really do respect you for your stand, and I wish you all the best. And if you would allow us to invite you again to go into more depth into this topic that you know so well. So thank you very much for spending this time with us.
It's been only a pleasure. And as I say, anytime, if I can help anyone or assist in any way, I'm always available.